Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Foley,
Here.
Trustee Lappin,
Here.
Clerk Palovich, here. Treasurer Ellery Summers, here. Trustee Paul,
Excuse that.
Trustee Dunkel, Supervisor Skibby.
Before you is the agenda for the public hearing. Are there any corrections, additions, subtractions to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the budget hearing agenda as presented?
Motion to adopt.
Support.
Support.
We don't get to vote, we get to talk about it.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Lappin,
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers,
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel, Trustee Foley,
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. This is the first opportunity for public comment. If you have public comment of the budget, please stand to the podium, state your name clearly and address, and limit yourself to 3 minutes, please.
Hi, my name is Marie Twite. I live at 4165 Truckee Road, and I'm a resident of Alpena Township, and I'm here to express my displeasure with the advertising for this budget hearing. Should be for a general law millage, and not the language that you use could be interpreted to be 10 mills, and I would be absolutely opposed to that. And I'm also here to address the ambulance millage. It is not in the budget that I could find where you absolutely should have had a line item for to purchase an ambulance, because it was my understanding when the millage was requested that that's what it was for an ambulance. And I don't see anywhere in there, unless you could show me a line item. I do not see in the budget at all that funds that you would have collected for an ambulance to be put in that budget. I also am asking about provisional water fund, and I would hope that at some point you would address that. Where did the money go? There was almost $2 million in it from the last budget to this budget, and there's almost $1 million gone. That's not addressed, and there was no explanation in your budget as to where it went or where it was spent at. And I did not see anything in the paper where that was addressed at any time. So I think this board owes our community an explanation of that, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mr. Reinhardt, we have a gentleman coming.
All right, thank you. Never want to follow Marie if I can win.
Well, you stay there.
Frank Krasinski, 146 Fair Point. My question is the township proposing a levy as per the Act 359, 42.27 about assessing the valuation of all real and personal properties. The electors of the township may do this. A total of 1% of the assessed valuation of all real and personal property. If so, which electors voted for this? Also, I learned this from my denial on a estimated my tax assessment. The township is proposing paying out $188,140 for the 2019-20 for 2 assessors. Again, I learned this from the assessing department, that just because one property sold for $10,000, my property was assessed 100% more. The city of Alpena pays $90,000 a year for 3 years, and they're into their second year for a contract assessor. If the township pays a similar amount in that contract, it would mean a savings of $98,140 a year. Over a 3-year term, the savings would amount to $294,420. Why don't we go that route? Also, the compensation and expenses of the members, how was the salaries determined by this board? Was it done by an electorate, the township trustees here, or was it done by an appointed committee as per Act 359? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosinski.
3 minutes isn't enough. I'm Russ Reiner, 315 Fire Drive. First, let me address the fire department and understand that I was looking at the 2019-20 said proposed budget, and then second to the right of that it says recommended budget. So initially it looked like there was no proposed budget from the general fund for the fire department. It's been reduced, I think, over the last 2 years from 300,000 to 200,000, but it was zero in the proposed. I see the recommended is 200,000. I hope that's what you're going with. Otherwise, my calculations are that the total amount of the new fire department millage, which we as voters voted upon to improve our fire department, would have been taken back into the general fund by not contributing 200,000 from the general fund. In other words, you would have absorbed, just like the state of Michigan did, I believe, with the lottery money, you would have absorbed that money into the budget. So I believe you need to at least provide an allocation of 200,000 to the fire department. In regard to salaries, plus on the fire department, I noticed that it looks like you're allocating, and I don't have a big problem with this, but it needs to be dealt with so that people understand. About 22,000, if I've calculated it right, of what was previously general fund expenses are now being charged against the fire department. And I see that's a pro rata type of allocation of snow plowing and other things, heat, lights, and so on. When you folks were elected, I think there was parity among the 3 elected full-time employees in salaries. Now I see quite a disparity. I see that the salary recommendations for this time leave the treasurer at about where that office was at. The clerk at a sizable increase. The supervisor at an even slightly larger sizable increase. And I don't have a problem with the increases. What I have a problem with is changing the parity. Because whether you think as a board that one person is less deserving or more deserving than another, should enter into this. Each of you were elected by us. Each of you were elected to receive fair compensation. If there's inadequacies, we'll deal with them at the next election. That's not for you to deal with. And I think the next person that runs for that office, whatever office it might be, including your own, should be able to come in parity with the other folks of a like nature. So I suggest that and request it.
Mr. Reinhardt. Thank
My
you.
3 minutes are up?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's
We'll have another opportunity. Public comment?
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name is Ben Westrope. I live at 509 Brentwood Drive. I'm a volunteer with the South Bay Improvement Group, and I have a brief letter to read on their behalf. Dear Supervisor and Trustees, the members of Taking Pride in Alpena, doing business in South Bay, have viewed with concern Alpena Township's recommended budget for 2019 to 2020. The organization has requested a $5,000 allocation, and according to this budget, will be granted only $1,000. In the 8 years since South Bay began as a grassroots volunteer group, it has accomplished much, including paving and cleaning projects along US 23 South, establishment of a small park at the southeast tip of Partridge Point, and funding with community help an engineering study that will lead to extensions of the current bike path along US 23 South and a park at the southeast corner of South Partridge Point Road in US 23. All of it has been done with broad support from the community and yourselves on the Alpena Township Board, who have over time allocated $12,000 for the effort. In fact, this board in 2014 adopted a resolution of support for the South Bay Plan and included it in both the recreational and master plans for the township. South Bay has won grants from the Best Foundation, Park Family Foundation, Community Foundation of Northeast Michigan, Consumers Energy, Alpena Regional Medical Center, Chemical Bank, First Federal, Rotary Club of Alpena, and Temple Michigan Insurance, totaling more than $120,000. All this proves those inside and outside Alpena Township see the value of South Bay's efforts. They are trying to boost this area's economy through cleanups and by enhancing its recreational amenities, while at the same time preserving and protecting its natural beauty. Their efforts were undertaken as a result of 4 public input sessions, involvement from NAMCOG, studies from 2 groups of students at the Michigan State University College of Planning, Design, and Construction, and Beckett and Reeder, a landscape architect firm. The proposed 45th parallel park will be a welcome to Alpena with a view of Squaw Bay and Sulphur Island, access for bicycles from the Mackinac Bridge, and Alpena down the proposed bypass extension, and access from the south in the future from Osceola. Also planned are picnic tables, grassy areas for picnics and dog walks, a boardwalk, and viewing area on the water, and more. This park will be a connecting point our community will be proud of and will provide an economic stimulus for US 23 South area and a strong recreational amenity for tourists and locals. South Bay would like to point out that there are many people who pull off the roadway onto a narrow, steep shoulder at the 45th park sign to take pictures. This is a potentially serious accident waiting to happen. Having the 45th parallel park at the proposed location would provide a safe place for photos with nearly the same view. It has been suggested that South Bay consider the Partridge Point Park as a site for the 45th parallel park. However, the ordinary high water mark for Lake Huron is nearly at the parking lot at the end of Frog Lane, and considerable paving would be needed. South Bay has been working hard to benefit the entire Alpena community and is concerned that dropping their allocation from $5,000 to $1,000 may lead to dropping the ball on a project important to the entire area. It urges you to consider the work already done, remember those in the community who have also supported this vision, abide by your rec and master plans, and continue to be a builder for the future by allocating $5,000 for South Bay. Thank you on behalf of Larry Clark and the South Bay Board of Directors.
Public comment?
Stan Michigan, I live at 446 Victoria Drive, Alpena, Michigan. I'm just here to say I'm in favor of you guys getting raises. I was on the township board the last time the township board members got a raise. That was in my head without even looking, I think 2008. So it's been long overdue. But I noticed when I was looking in the budget, the clerk, treasurer, the treasurer's not got a raise. If the supervisor and the clerk's going to get a raise, why isn't the treasurer get a raise? That's my only comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell.
My name is Mike Sobak, 1415 Island Drive. I'm very opposed to your wages. You were elected, you knew the wage. It is not your right to propose your own wages. Nobody in this room has ever worked somewhere where they could propose their own wages. It should be up to the elections, the people that voted you in. Talking on behalf of my neighbors as well. They're elderly and couldn't make it. They also, I'd like to, if I can, a show of hands of everybody opposed to this. That's the case. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Yes, Mr.
Brett Finzel, 8266 North Point Shores. Just a couple of things. One is, I apologize, I haven't seen you much. I've been actually quite a bit this winter, but there's a couple of things that I was still trying to wrestle with this budget. One is, when I left, I had attended a meeting where our fire chief and others argued for the need for certain items, and we did approve power lifts at that time in terms of the ambulances and buses. Problem is, there's nowhere in this budget that I really see that we're going to address the larger issue, which is we still need an ambulance, we still need a tanker, and we still need an engine. So whether we believe that or not, those vehicles aren't gonna last very much longer. And I just don't see how we're gonna cover that with the way we're looking at the fire department, not so much the numbers as instead of. I mean, that meeting was pretty harsh. I mean, we pretty much, they were begging us and we were turning them down, and we even shortened their presentation. So that was a pretty harsh meeting. So I was hoping to see more in here about how the fire department might be handled in a little different way. As for salaries, I don't have a problem with salaries increasing either. It is a fairly large, significant increase, so I would say that if you ever settled the water issue, I might consider a merit raise, but since that's not settled, I would say no merit raises.
Thank you, Brett. More public comment?
Hello, I'm Lori McDonald, 6661 US 23 North. Over the past week, I've had a lot of emails from people, basically from the fire department, friends, family, whatever. And they made me aware that that the township has hired a downstate law firm. I'm just wondering why, or what purpose they were hired for, and who's paying for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Well, I think I would just like to gather a lot of the questions. That way, if there's a lot of repetition, then we can address them appropriately. Public comment? Well,
Go ahead, no, you go ahead, I already asked you. Go ahead, my friend, more.
Beverly Banks, 5864 Misery Bay Road. Please forgive me because numbers are not my expertise. First, I want to say thank you for your time and energy in trying to do this. It's got to be a hard job sitting there, and I understand that. Some of your line items that I questioned, HSA, I'm assuming is health savings account. Is that correct? Thank you. One thing that I've noticed that I don't understand, please educate me, why the HSA amounts are not consistent. For example, what I have for supervisor is $2,600. The assessor is $6,500. The clerk is $2,600. The treasurer is $2,600. The liquor and law enforcement is $0. Building inspector, $6,500. So I just don't understand what the math is based off of why they're so inconsistent. That's number one question. Number two would be, what company, is it a local company that you actually go through to get insurance and through the HSA? And what other, or how many other companies do you run a cost analysis or comparisons on? And what percentage is the employer paid versus the employee?
thank you very much for your comments.
Marie White, 4165 Brecky Road. I just wanted to reiterate the fire department, the millage that was requested. I get it, it's for using that part for the operational. I'm assuming that's what that said. I don't recall the exact language for the last millage that you requested, other than the ambulance one. But Alpena Township originally started out the fire department and paid for all costs for the fire department. And a little bit over 20 years ago, Alpena Township asked the township residents for a millage for 1 mil, which they received, and it was renewed once after that. And then there was a new renewal here in 18. And I don't know how that worked out, whether you got 1 mil and 1 1/4 mils, or if you only got the 1 1/4 mils. But there has been no added funding from the township. I mean, there is to barely make it, but you didn't do anything with the ambulance or for any fire truck replacement or anything that I could see in there. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Thank you for your comment.
My name is Ellen Doan, I live at 2247 Long Lake Park Road. At one of the budget meetings, I recorded Mr. Malcolm wanted to purchase or lease 3 vehicles. I want to know, is that in the budget? And what line item it's under? Can you hear me?
I know, I think.
recant behind that.
Well,
Can you?
Okay. At one of the
There.
budget meetings, I recorded Mr. Malcolm stated that to the board that he wanted to lease 3 vehicles and would like to put them in the budget. Was that in the budget? And what line item did you put it under? I couldn't find it. And I'm not sure if you proposed it or if you tabled it or what. Also, if you are going to get the 3 cars, who's going to be getting the 3? Do you know? Do you know already, or do you know what I'm talking about, Steve? Okay,
yes,
you do.
I do.
And then also I'd like to know, if you do get the cars, are you gonna get rid of your mileage? Because that is a big amount.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there any further public?
I have one more. Where the family, 6661, West
Could you actually just hold on a second to address the phone? Thank you.
Anyhow, the liquor licensing man, he's also the assistant assessor, if I'm correct in that. I'm to understand that this person has lost his credentials for assessing. I actually looked it up on the Michigan Regulatory Commission's website today and could not find any credentials for this person who is getting a significant raise. So it's another one version.
Since it's at home,
Go
go ahead,
ahead,
sir, please,
go ahead.
please.
No, you're already up.
I'm not that old yet. I can get up again. I'll see how much I can get in the next 3 minutes. Again, Russ Reiner. I agree that using a contractual assessor might be better. Finding qualified assessors are difficult. I realize that, and so they come at a premium price. But using contractual as the city does, as the gentleman indicated, will save us money. In regard to the salaries, one of the things I noticed is in the assessor's line items, there's contractual services of something like $12,000 a year, I think. And I wondered, are we still hiring a consultant to teach us how to be a charter township? Because it seems like we should be past that by now. In fact, in my opinion, we should have been past that before we passed the resolution. But in any event, it seems like we should be done hiring a consultant for that purpose. As far as Board of Trustees salaries, I think from $3,500 to $5,000, knowing how hard the work is for being on a board of this type is a pittance, really, so I have no objection to it. I agree that I was troubled by the fact that South Bay got 1,000. It looks like Thunder Bay Island's getting 15,000. Rails Trails 20,000. And South Bay and other projects on the mainland seem to me to be a little more deserving because more of us can use it than the few people that traverse out to Thunder Bay Island. So I wondered about that one. Rails to Trail seems like a limited usage group as well. So I really think that those numbers should be looked at and reallocated. there's been a lot of talk lately around about a $10 million reserve fund. And don't get me wrong, I believe that reserve funds are a wonderful thing and should be implemented. But $10 million reserve fund in the water, for the water situation, water sewer, to me is excessive. I'm told that the city has a $2.6 million fund, and of course their plant equipment is much more expensive than ours as far as replacement and repair. So it seems like 10 million means that we're being charged too much for water. The last question I have here from all of this, and there's much more specifics that all of us could talk about, is whether or not there's going to be a millage increase. I know that as a charter township, we could legally, can I wait until you?
I will, yes, I'll extend that courtesy, yes.
I know that as a charter township, we talked about this at the time of the resolution for charter township, you can go ahead and increase the operating millage. You promised at that time that you wouldn't do so without a vote of the people. And yet, in the notice for this meeting, I noticed that it says way in the middle, kind of tucked in where you might not notice it unless you read the whole thing carefully, something about discussing how you're going to support this budget fiscally, and whether that meant an increase in millage was the inference. So I hope you will hold yourself to your promise to give us that vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reinhardt.
Hello, I'm Dave Doan, 2247 Longwood Park Road. I've got a couple of questions about the proposed budget on the building inspector. Your insurance is going to, for your Blue Cross Blue Shield premiums, is going from $10,000 to $43,000. Seems a little bit spicy. And the clerk's salary is going from $15,000 to $34,000. That seems a little bit pricey. If you were putting that all over maybe 3 years, I could swallow it. Can't swallow it over 1 year, not 100% plus raise. Hell, I'd go work for there in a minute for that. The other comment I had is about the 15,000 as opposed to what we were paying you. You donated the 5,000, I guess, for the sanctuary. I wonder why that got such a big increase from last year's budget to this year's budget. I don't think we can afford that. And why should we be? I mean, it's even part of the city. It's expensive to me.
Could you clarify when you say sanctuary?
Under the island.
Under by the
There
island.
you go.
It's part of the
That's Alpena Township.
township.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
It's just there's a lot of raises here. I don't believe all the raises for the 3 elected officials should be equal. They have been equal as far as the percentages go. I believe they should be equal, whatever they are. I believe you guys deserve a raise. I've had one quite some time. But I think they should be fair. I don't think they should be non-fair. Like was stated before, when somebody else comes in to replace you, that's not necessarily being fair. You're elected officials, you're all elected officials. And it should be treated accordingly. The other comment is that about the vehicle situation. I don't understand that. The township has worked for years on running, paying millage for miles for use of their own vehicles. And now the proposal for the inspector, for the building inspector was to lease or rent a vehicle or something. They didn't need one before, and all of a sudden we have a big need for that now. I don't understand that. Can you get back to this one?
thank you very much, Mr. Are there any further public comment? Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Nathan and board. It's good to see everybody again. I understand I asked Ben Westrup and the board asked, the Board of South Bay asked him to read a letter earlier, and I heard that he did. Appreciate that very much. I'd like to follow up on a couple of things, if I may. And please forgive me, I'm going to need cataract surgery. They finally found a spot where they haven't cut on yet, so that's a nice thing, I guess. At any rate, you know, the plans for the 45th Parallel Park and other projects from South Bay have been really in the works for the last 8 years. We've been coming to the trustees as the elder, trustees, both Norm and have certainly heard those. It's also been given to the Planning Commission. In 2014, may I remind you, a letter of support was issued by this board. The motion was made by Norm Poley, and the motion, I had made a presentation on all of our projects on South Bay, including at that time a park near the 46th Parallel Park sign. That motion was passed. The motion itself is support for our South Bay corridor plans. Now, afterwards, we of course found out and listened to you about the sensitivity of that land. That's Great Lakes bottom land in that location and the sign. And we're asked to pursue private property, which needless to say we did. And finally found a piece at the southeast corner of South Parking Point Road. So we moved on with our plans. We've been making numerous presentations here, as you know, from me and the Planning Commission. I have asked, in fact, for an additional letter of support for the 45th Parallel Park at its current proposed site, as well as the bike path extension, and was told it wasn't necessary. We already had, as a group, a letter of support. So moving on, you know, I've personally been involved in this so many times with so many different people in the community. I know the level of support from citizens as well as grantors like Besser and Park Family Foundation and Community Foundation, as well as from you, until maybe recently. Now, I understand your concerns about the location. We certainly don't want to be building something or propose building something that's a behemoth, that doesn't complement the environment. But I also think that showcases our area, and it can be done in a tasteful way, as many other nature preserves are, and will really be an economic node, an economic welcome place for people coming into Alpena, as well as citizens and so forth. So I would ask you in closing to please take another look at that location. Please stand by the commitments you've made to us in planning sessions, trustee meetings, also in the rec plan, and through 2 master plans to continue, at this current location. So with that, I guess the last thing would be, why not go ahead with this wetlands assessment? Then we'll know for sure just exactly how environmentally friendly it might be and what may need to be done. And of course, they may come back and say, no, it just can't be done at the location of your proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other public comment?
Hi, April Wallet, 104 Blueberry Drive. I noticed on the budget, and maybe it's just not represented correctly, but it wouldn't appear that there's been an outside audit of the township since 2016, and it doesn't appear that that's on the budget for next season. I could see skipping a year, maybe 2, but 4 might be a stretch, just personally.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name for the minute.
April Wallet,
W-A-L-L-E.
OG.
Are there any more public comments? Seeing none, I think at this point in time, we'll kind of work through a lot of the questions that were brought forth for clarification. I think what I heard a few different times was the fire department millages and what those rates are and where those funds are at. There were copies of the budget that were available. They are 2-sided. So it makes it a little bit cumbersome, but if you actually go back into the revenue section for fire department. It is listed what both of their millages are. Our fire department was secured with the blessing of the voters of the township. Part of one question was a renewal of 1 mil plus 0.5. So that took that number from an annual revenue stream of, at 1 mil, roughly $330,000, with 1.5 mil, just shy of $520,000 for operations. On top of that, a $200,000 contribution from the general fund. So for operations, they're roughly $720,000 for operations. The second millage that was secured with the blessings of the voters of the township was an equipment millage at 0.65 mils. At a sunset, a short-term millage. Those funds, revenue would be, let me actually get to the right page here for you. Okay. Turns out to be $225,090 for equipment. Did we break that out into an ambulance fund or a fire truck fund? It's all equipment. That would be the recommendations of our interim chief, Dave Robbins, and with the blessings and the direction of their fire department to make that acknowledgement to this board as to how to move forward as a fire department within our community to offer the best services possible.
Can I make a statement on that? Because I have that also right here, and it shows that you're taking it in as a revenue, but it doesn't show that you're putting it aside for the ambulance. It is not down in where the expenses are. That's what the problem is.
Well, and the long and short of it is that clearly this board nor the general fund are utilizing any of those funds. Those are site-specific to fire department, and that's what the people wanted, was to support our fire department.
But for equipment, it was my understanding that $225,000 was for equipment, whether it be an ambulance or a fire truck. But what I'm saying, it is not down in your budget for expenditures that you could be spending that money there.
We were unable to put a specific new line item that says for equipment because we are in the middle of the state required chart of accounts conversion. So we are not allowed to change any line items or add any for anything new at this time. Or we would have added a line item in expenses for the equipment bought with that millage.
But there is a truck line item down in there.
A truck line item. It's equipment. That was not the recommendation of the fire department.
Ambulance
so
replacement fund, what is that?
something that.
Why couldn't you put $225,000
And at this point in
in
time,
that?
Ms. White, I think that everybody, and including yourself, has had at least a couple times. I would like to address the questions that were presented so that everybody else can have
That
them.
one is inadequately addressed.
And that was, as our clerk, Michelle Plavich, has stated, that is something that has hindered this process throughout our entire budget. So some of the misnomers are, since we cannot create line items, one of the questions being within the assessing department. Half of a wage is for Howard Lumsden as liquor enforcement agent. The other half of his salary is from assessing. You are correct in terms of licensure, but under the way we are currently with Chris Lewis being our head assessor, he is our umbrella license, and Howard is doing field work. So he does not need to be a licensed assessor. So that is, and then on top of that, given, once again, the unfortunate reality of the chart of accounts going through the Department of Treasury and not being able to create line items, is that on top of that, of which was stated in the press was 108% increase, I would like to clarify that once again, solely for the point of, as I aforementioned, half is for, out of that assessing, field assessing line item, is half of one employee, i.e. the other half of Howard Lumsden. The remaining balance of that capital is for the hiring of a new field assessor. that will be able to work and train under Mr. Lewis's licensure, so as we can anticipate and predict the fact that within 5 years, he's potentially going to be retiring. We have somebody already in the wings that we're training. So minimize, because there in throughout the state is a huge lack of licensed assessors. Is it potentially something down the road to explore with subcontracting services, i.e. what the city and numerous other townships within the county do? I think everything should be on the table. But as it stands, we have great employees that are able to do those tasks. And we're, as a board, anticipating the fact that we would rather be proactive in hiring somebody that's a sound replacement rather than reactive and try to find somebody that has those licensure secured. So in terms of the fire department, equipment fund is just that. It wasn't broken out into truck replacement. It was, although you'll see that there is still a payment on engine 2 as an ongoing expense. That is, we're waiting for our chief to bring that back to us and a recommendation of what equipment is on the hierarchy of what we need replacement on. So moving forward there again, I think I addressed the liquor and assessing aspects with Mr. Lumsden. Yes.
Mr. Reinhardt asked about the notice that was published in the paper and the reference to the millage rate. That's required by statute. It doesn't mean that it's going to be increased.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, okay.
So, and there again, supplementary and in addition to Mr. Reinhardt's comments, we are not, the resolution that this board had passed to become a charter township is one where we did not and will not afford ourselves the ability to secure without a vote of the public an additional 5 mills. That was the reason that we secured that resolution. If it would have went the other way, it would have been anything, if there's ever a millage increase, it has to go before the public.
That was the one court opinion, but at least a footnote in it.
Well, and that's the stance of Michigan Township Association as well. So.
That's their recommendation, not their, they don't make law.
Well, and so we are not levying a millage increase. As it stands with the recommended budget, our general fund is in the black. So there is no, even with employee salary increases, there is no need for increasing of taxation of the public. That is also a concern of this board. You support us, and we're trying our best to support you. The water fund balance. As there was a handout, I don't know if there's any more left, it was page 10 of our audit report, of which, since I just touched on audit, we've had an audit for the past 2 years by a reputable firm. So that is always taking place. But on page 10 of the audit report that was placed on the table, this is a breakout of that audit, which is not only on the Department of Treasury's website, but numerous other locations. If you look at that printout, the reason that our water fund balance looks so egregiously high is explained on this page. If you look at the middle column and work your way towards the net position in the middle column, what is included in that is also the fixed assets of both the water fund in that middle column. So our fixed asset list is $5.5+ million. Our liquid and our true cash fund balance is $2.2 million. And if you slide to the right and to the left is general fund, of which next year there will be an additional column given the fact that there will be a public safety fund. Our fixed assets of the township and the general fund, which in this fiscal year also included the fire department, was $2.2 million with a fund balance of $882,000. The combination therein of both funds gets you to our accrued total net position, which does and reflects the $10.8 million. Now, is that a true representation of a cash fund balance? No. Is that the proper accounting tax? Yes. But in terms of fund balance and operating cash fund balance for the water fund, as of last year, March 31st of 2018, that amount was $2,226,787. Mr. Rosinski, I see you have your hand up.
Yes,
Since
I do. Let's go back to the audit. And we had an audit about 3-4 years ago, and it was determined that the township was in arrears to the workman's comp. That they were being, going to be defaulted by the federal government because the workman's comp was not being paid. Now, that was for 3 years in a row. Who did that audit? And did we pay them when they didn't even catch something so simple as a audit that they didn't pay the taxes?
and I
How about if we don't pay our taxes?
appreciate your comment, Mr. Rosinski, and to add to that, the firm that was utilized in those years previous to this full board was Campbell and Associates, of which we no longer employ for our auditing, because in the past, yes, this was prior to this administration, but yes, that was the firm that was picked by the board at that point in time, sir.
And were there not fines and costs involved?
Yes, there were egregious amounts of
Now,
fines.
did we go after that audit firm to pay those since they missed that?
There were a lot of things that unfortunately we've corrected moving forward. And one of them, and primarily one of them, is using a reputable auditing firm.
Could I ask what years those were for?
For
The workman's comp? He said the past 3 years, that would have been, was that 18, 17, and 16?
No,
3 years.
it was prior to 2016.
So,
It was 3 years prior to 17?
but yeah, and that was, as I aforementioned, Mr. Rosinski, that was previous to,
So we no longer hire them?
no, that was,
Still getting correspondence
And-
and fines from it.
yes, and we are still actually in a payment plan because, Ms. Dwight, we're actually, if you could, we are actually still paying those fines currently. We are on a payment plan because of the lack of due diligence of what happened in the past. And one of the cementing aspects of moving forward was, as I mentioned, securing the employment of a subcontracting auditing firm that is reputable and not the cheapest. We were able to find a lot of things in past practices that we've corrected moving forward. And that's been a help. That also was a mechanism of which I know personally, I would never, even in the first 2 years, until I knew where we financially stood, even explore the opportunity of a 1% increase in wage. Because I wanted, and the same, I'd say I paid the same taxes as everybody else in this room, is if I don't know where we stand per the old audits, how can anybody else? So this is the first year that we've had actually back-to-back years of a very well documented auditing aspect. And that's why we're able, as we went through with employee increases, that was through contract negotiations with the FOPLC, and that was across the board. So employees throughout the entire facility have received a 3% raise. And down to HSA.
I have one question on that.
Yes, sir.
You have not explained the clerk payroll yet. That was a question asked?
Yep, that was.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still,
Okay,
I'm
good,
the
super. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. HSA. The reason that, and the easiest explanation for HSA is that at an individual who's receiving Blue Cross Blue Shield, the health savings account is funded at $1,300 for an individual, $2,600 for a family plan. And as you mentioned, you also rattled off a few other departments. One, I believe, was the building official. The building official is on a family plan personally, and then it leads to one of the conundrums of our administrative assistant for that. That is also reflective in his budget because she's 50% of his secretary or administrative assistant, I apologize. And with every department, it's based on employee numbers. So if there's 3 employees, 2 of which may have family plan, 1 may have an individual. So as it's simply broken down, for an individual HSA plan, it's $1,300 contribution and $2,600 for a family plan. Does that answer your question about HSAs?
Did you just list 2 employees or 3? I was confused.
Well, every department has numerous
But for the
employees.
building inspector department.
That would be
that's included.
that would be 2, but a family plan, 2 family plans, I believe, is what
Yeah,
comes
so
out.
600 plus 2,600, so
Yeah.
not 6,500.
And there again, this is actually easily answered because since with the chart of accounts, we cannot create, and I aforementioned the fact that in the assessing department, part of that salary increase, which if you add everything together is 108%, that is half of a new employee to do field assessing. In the building department, we anticipated the other half of said employee working in the building department doing site visits. So that employee would be full-time, but we had to anticipate on the high end of not knowing if he or she, whatever the employee comes in, is under a family plan or under a single plan. So you always anticipate having the higher expense, and once we hire somebody in secure, if it's a lower rate, then we amend the budget accordingly. So.
You have 1 full-time additional employee in the building department plus a half-time? So you have
No,
Mr. Malcolmson, a full-time employee and a half-time? Is that what you're telling us?
we have Mr. Malcolmson, building official, full-time. And as an administrative assistant, Ms. Talaska is 50% in his department. I think I have 15%. It was a unique pie chart that she created in terms of her job responsibilities in which departments, i.e. and also which boards she does the most work for. So 1 new employee that's split between the assessing department and the building department. Not 2, but just 1, but it's half funded through the assessing department, half funded through the building official department. So, back to you, Mr. Worth.
I don't think I heard what you said. Did I hear you say that the building inspector's wife works for him?
No, that's an administrative assistant,
Who
not her.
supervises her?
Who's
her
supervises
supervisor?
whom?
Maybe I misunderstood.
The administrative assistant is not the same person I know.
No,
Oh, okay,
No.
all right. So you don't have a husband and wife team here,
not in the same department, by no means.
But you do.
but you do.
But unfortunately, we do, and
Okay,
historically,
all right.
we have as well.
Hence, here's my question. Do they both take insurance from us or one?
1.
And what does the other one get?
In terms
Do
of,
they get a pay cash for not taking insurance?
in terms of the union
Are
contract.
they covered
if
by
you-
our,
if-
no, I'm just
Mr. Worth,
asking.
if
Are
you
they
dis-
covered by our insurance?
Would you let me finish?
Uh-huh.
And this is a continuation of our discussion that we had
Well, I
last
didn't
Friday.
realize it was a husband and wife team, but that's okay.
Well,
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Uh-huh.
So, Mr. Malcolmson has insurance. She is opted out, and per our union contract, if you opt out, and that was one of the first things that this new administration did, was elected officials included. If you opt out of health insurance, you are at the same level of a payment in lieu of insurance as every employee at $300 a month.
Okay. So it sounds like a glitch in the system to me then, because she's in fact, that person is in fact insured by us. We're paying for that insurance. Is
And
that
yet-
not correct?
Yes, but then, and this is the same conversation that we always
Well, I know, but I want the people to understand
I-
that we've got a person that we're paying insurance on,
Yeah.
and we're paying the same person not to take our insurance.
Yes. So
Yeah,
at an
should
annual
the board
basis-
not address that?
So,
Listen, I mean, if you want to give me $300 so I can stay home, I'll take it, all right? But should not the board address it, that we are in fact paying someone not to take our insurance? And I'm speaking as a taxpayer, all right?
yeah.
We're paying somebody not to take our insurance, but we're in fact insuring them.
Right.
Isn't that a little ludicrous even to a simple-minded sergeant like me? No?
I'm just a simple-minded man, don't get it either.
Well,
Yeah, you don't understand that either?
so.
I mean, if I may be...
Because, Mr. Worth, because, and I respect and understand your setting. It's also a fact that if you opt out as an employee, even at $3,600, that is less than 20% of what her, if she opted into the health insurance, would be to the township.
Can they do
She's
both?
already covered.
She's already covered. You're paying her twice.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm not blaming you or the board. I think you guys
policy.
your hands are tied. There's not a lot you can do. But who negotiates with the union? We sure don't. You guys do, right? So when you got two people who are employed by us, the people,
Sir, there's actually Island Drive. I forget. Yeah, I do apologize for losing your name. But could we, there's actually one person, that way we don't have numerous conversations going on.
and what I would like to see is whoever is in charge of dealing with the union, at least approach the union and say, hey, I mean, that's the issue, right? It's a union issue. It's not, you guys didn't vote for this, the union did, and you got saddled with it. I understand that part. But I also understand that unions negotiate all the time. I mean, I just watched, General Motors negotiate constantly, and they negotiate on health care all the time. So if they can, why can't we? Why can't you, I guess, is it? Because, I mean, you don't want me to talk to them. I'd probably be
Well, thank you very much for your comments. Brett, did you?
And just a clarification on the HSAs. When I've set up HSAs for the people that work for me, normally HSAs are an alternative to the employer paying the insurance, right? We're slowly shifting to the employee that is then learning how to save for health-related reasons. So somewhere along the line, the board has decided to make a contribution towards the HSAs for their employees, right? Because they don't have to do that. That's something that obviously you guys have negotiated. Is that something that you would continue to do? As an example, last place I worked, we did it for a 5-year period. We contributed to their HSAs for 5 years. In 5 years, we kept cutting down. At 5 years, we figured the employees would have the ability to save in their own HSAs. Understand the concept of HSAs, how much they want to put forward towards their HSAs. So is it the board's idea that they would continue to contribute to those HSAs? The other thing I would just comment is I believe that you guys, one of the first actions you took as a board, in a positive way, was that you reduced the in lieu ofs, right? There was tremendous in lieu ofs before that. And so $300 in lieu of is not a lot of money anymore, which is, so I applaud you for that, because that was one of the first things I remember people arguing about. But could you just clarify that on the HSA? Is that something the board would continue to do, just indefinitely, support the HSA?
Well, I think indefinitely would be a very ludicrous statement to make. With the fluctuations of insurance, healthcare premiums across the nation, especially within this state, we've actually seen a little bit of a downtick, but that doesn't mean that next year those anticipated costs are higher. As we stand, we're currently looking at a 3-year projected of funding in HSA at that level. But I think it definitely needs to be, honestly, a cognitive decision and really looked at, especially after the contract expires, where those costs are. Because it was an enabling mechanism. It was previous to this administration to utilize an HSA because the cost of the policy that was in place at that point in time was then considered a Cadillac policy, and its rates skyrocketed. So this was a way of minimizing overall, and yet still giving our employees a very nice coverage in terms of health care. Mr. Wilson, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I thought I understood this until all this conversation took off. Mr. Malcolmson is a full-time employee with full-time benefits, correct?
Correct.
And his wife is also, but she opts out of the health insurance plan.
That is also correct.
And you give him a family plan, or you give him a single plan?
He is on a family plan,
Okay, now
funded
she
at
would-
$2,600 for the HSA.
Okay, so he gets 2,600 towards his HSA for, what's the time period?
For an entire year. That's
For a
our
year.
contribution.
But you pay her 3,600 a year to stay out of it?
That is actually, and yet as ridiculous as
She's
you
still
may
in-
find that,
Oh,
that is
well,
still,
I'm sorry.
it is still, the reality is it's still cheaper than having her on the township's insurance.
You could be on her husband's for $1,300.
So,
She is, she is on.
Excuse me, just let me,
Yeah.
she could be on her husband's plan for $1,300, but you leave her on her own to, by her own, whatever. I mean, she must be retired with benefits or something, don't care. But you pay her $3,600 to stay away.
and Steve, would you actually like to address this insurance quandary?
This is really not my world, so
Oh, it's
bear
something,
with
what do you
me.
mean?
I have no interest and nor do I have any understanding really in the health insurance world. I'm far better in other areas, but she could opt in to the health insurance as well. She can say, I want to have my own policy, which would actually cost the township dramatically more. So we could have two single plans.
Well, if you're giving her if you pay $1,300, how can it cost you more?
Because I think what's the single rate, you know?
I don't know.
I think it's something like 1,300 or something like that a month.
Well, okay, now,
And
maybe
so
I'm
if we pay her
misunderstanding.
if we pay her $300 a month, we're actually saving $1,000 a month. Because she would be in.
Okay, I guess I'm missing it on the time elements on these payments. Because you're paying her $300 a month not to be there.
Right, but if she said, I want to have my health insurance, it's a benefit to me, I want to have it.
Okay,
And so we have to pay for it.
and what does that cost?
I don't know
Well,
exactly, but I
it's
think
age
it's somewhere
prorated.
around 1,300, it's age rated.
That's a month, Mr.
Yeah,
Ladd?
yeah.
So Mr. Malcolmson is getting $1,300 a month, and she's getting it for his benefit?
When
And she's getting-
when you state $1,300 a month,
Well, you're telling me that
are you
$1,300
confused between the HSA and the insurance?
Are we talking two different subjects?
Yes, you are talking two different subjects. I think you're starting to meld them
Well, I
together.
understand HSA, but I didn't understand, I thought everything was HSA.
No, that's health savings account.
That's just
I know what
solely,
a health savings, I've negotiated it myself, I understand
Okay.
it. But I thought that this place was on, I didn't understand that regular Blue Cross and an HSA alternative? Or
It's
is
a-
it all HSA?
no, it's Blue Cross and employer-funded HSA at $1,300 an
Okay,
individual.
that makes more sense.
$2,600 for a family plan.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
I guess the question for me, Nathan, is are you department heads also in the union?
No, they are not.
Well, there's your fix. That's, there's any number of policies the township board can make. As a salaried, non-union person in the municipality where I work, I couldn't do that. Even if my spouse were not disabled and able to work for the county, we wouldn't be able to work both of those. And if we could, I know that the county commissioners would fix it at the next negotiation.
Well, she's sitting right behind you to the left.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know anything about insurances, but are these insurances 100% paid by us, the employer, or do you as employees pay into your own insurance too? Like when I worked, I had to pay about $1,200 a month for my insurance.
Premium.
My
Yeah.
premium. Do you pay a premium?
Premiums are paid by the township.
No, do you pay it out of your
I pay,
paycheck?
what do,
Is it
I
for your
I put into the HSA.
So you don't pay for your insurance out of your paycheck?
No part of your premium.
Unless you have.
No
You don't
part
have
of
a
your premium
premium.
comes out of your-
Unless if I've added the optical or dental, then that is a direct contribution by me. And then, so for a family plan at $2,600 HSA, as of which I'm in, that is half of the deductible. So I have to contribute, like put a contribution of at least $2,600 to make the deductible. So.
Nathan, that was one of my questions, so let me just get some clarification here.
Okay.
Okay, what you're saying is part of the deductibles you pay, that's not an insurance premium. I guess my question that I wanted to know clarification on, is it 100% insurance premiums paid for by us, this institution, to the employees?
That is correct.
That is a wonderful benefit for them.
It most definitely
Nobody else
is.
gets it, ever.
That's like 80s, 90s.
That's unheard of.
Yes.
But thank you, thank you for the clarification.
No, and I'm glad. Sir, I have not heard from you.
Larry Calder, 2069 Partridge Street. If I understand correctly, now you have a defined benefit program for your retirement also?
We have the John Hancock.
So you have a defined, you don't have a 401k retirement?
It's within through John.
See, where I challenge the whole government system is that the government system should be at a level of the taxpayer in their community. I volunteer over at the senior center, and I see a couple hundred people a year helping them with their prescription coverage and their, their Medicare. And it's becoming unaffordable for the older generation of this town. And what we have here is, what I'm hearing now is, the people working for the township have got literally 10 times the benefits of the average working person in the township. I mean, if you do free insurance, free retirement, that's more than anybody I've ever seen at the senior center. Nobody there. I don't think the hospital now gives any retirement benefits. I don't think there's anybody else in town that gives free insurance. And I don't know why we would want to pay the taxpayer, want to pay all of your coverage. I mean, there should be some participation on your part, becoming accustomed to it. And if what I'm hearing on another person over here was it being funded for 5 years or 3 more years, so we're paying for everything.
And I would like to make one clarification to your statement. We as elected officials do not have a pension. That is employees' job, and I have
the employees, I'm talking about that, yeah.
But it is not a pension.
For the elected officials.
No.
That's correct, I understand that, but.
I thought that's.
No, and again, if you were to terminate tomorrow and your term runs out, it's the end of it for you. Okay. But I think, the benefits is somewhat, what we're working shift, that's my comment.
Right. The employees don't get, there's no health care, there's no benefits after once
There's no
we're done
legacy.
once you're done working.
Once you're done, you are done. So there's no
Yeah,
legacy.
no matter who.
The township has limited legacy costs.
Yes, and we've actually, going through that contract, that was one thing that we've addressed successfully. And that was one of the give and takes in the negotiation, is extending this, and it is a wonderful health insurance plan, which is seldomly seen. But that was a give and take to actually address some of our ongoing legacy costs that would have been a huge burden within 5 years of paying off individuals from their accrued sick vacation time allotments, to the point where there's individuals that are employees that could potentially be off for an entire year. And then per our union contracts, we also can't put anybody in those positions. So we were hamstrung. We actually worked that out through negotiations, of which we'll be talking about in our next meeting. Yes, sir.
Especially with the uncertainty in healthcare costs going forward, political changes and everything, I think the health insurance, even though there's questions about it, is going to be a great advantage, and not taking that away, keeping that, not considering taking it away, is going to be a great tool for bringing in talent to the township to work in our public sector. But it's on you guys to make sure that's being done correctly and effectively. But I just wanted to say that I believe that is a good tool for bringing in talent.
It is.
I concur with this gentleman, but I think that's got to be taken when we're looking at people's salary. Throw that number on top, and what would that number be on the average person for their premium? So I mean, that would be like another $10,000 a year in a salary.
Or more.
I don't know. Whatever it be now.
Yeah, no, and
So,
these
so
are all.
we're looking at somebody that's making $30,000, they really should be showing us $45,000.
But-
Or something in that neighborhood, like whatever those numbers may be, that's what should be reflected for somebody here when they talk about increases. That's a huge amount of money.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah. There was, am I forgetting anything? All right, have any of the questions that were presented as of this afternoon not been addressed? And if so, yes, please speak up.
No audit.
Oh, go, yeah. Well,
Downstate attorney.
oh, the downstate attorney. It was the direction of this board to retain an attorney from the same firm that the previous board retained attorneys from for water litigation.
What about union?
Union,
Yes,
for the union.
she is
So
from
that's-
that same firm.
This is a downstate attorney?
Yes.
For union busing?
If,
Why do we have a downstate attorney when we have a local firm that handles the litigation?
No, not that one.
Don't we have a
Not
local
that
firm?
litigation, no,
No, not that one.
no.
Oh.
One other question that you didn't address was the provisional water fund. Where did the funds go out of the?
Nowhere. And if you would be so kind to point out which line item that you're actually talking about, so that the trustees
It was,
can.
originally it was almost $2 million, and
Yeah.
it went down to $1 million
And which line item are you?
in the water fund.
Okay. Well, those funds, in terms of the provisional, long and short,
592.
unfortunately with the water litigation, are locked in that escrow account.
I know,
So-
but I thought it was like almost $2 million. Did you pay
It is-
some?
Nope,
It
because,
wouldn't show.
It won't show.
Revenue and
Yeah,
expense.
it wouldn't show as-
Wanting to,
yeah,
balance.
it wouldn't show on our budget because that's in escrow with another municipality. So we can't use it on a plus minus as a revenue or expenditure. So, Mr. Clark.
Just a closing comment or two, I didn't get them in earlier. One was, I see that Bob and Sue Eller wrote you a letter,
Yes.
and I was wondering if that might be, it was not read in the of course, at the beginning of the meeting, but I hope that either that will be read into the minutes or possibly addressed during the board meeting coming up.
Well, and the unfortunate reality, as I think we've made aware of, when our budgets or our agendas are created, we try to have our agendas and any and all information is with at least 3 days' notice so that we can get it presented appropriately. I did receive a letter this morning, an email,
Yeah. I know.
of which I responded appropriately
Okay.
and CC'd both our clerk and a trustee in my reply. And I don't think that there was anything but a positive moving forward from that.
Just curious, yeah, that's all.
No, well,
Bob, Sue liked to write pretty nice letters, so.
yes, it was a very well formatted, and I think that I made an extremely well-written reply as to that
Hey
letter.
Nathan, before you move on off of insurance, who is the agency that handles all of our insurances?
Our health insurance, all of them?
Oh, yeah.
It's through Lappin/Sterling Agency, and I guess I could explain why we went to them.
It's through Lappin?
Lappin/Sterling.
Mr. Lappin, are you still on the board there?
I have no ownership in it.
Are you on the board, sir?
There's no board. I don't own the company.
Because I was here at the budget meeting, and I noticed every time they came to a line item with insurances or anything that has to do with your line of business, former line of business, they directed their eyeballs right to you, and you would say, I'll handle that.
That was on property and casualty insurance. That was not on health insurance.
We got the videos, it's pretty much on all the
Well,
insurances.
I can assure you, I do not answer questions on health insurance. I know little, if anything, about it.
No, the health insurance was actually broken apart by our clerk for that budget session that you're speaking of.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Ms. Summers.
As far as the escrow account at M-Bank as of February 28th, and that's the money that's tied up that nobody could touch, there's $3.6 million in there.
Okay, I knew it should have been
That's the city.
over $3 million.
I'm just
But your budget here, it had it in there at one point, It was in there last year, it was in there at the beginning, and when I looked at the new one, it's not in there. It shows $1 million in the hole, provisional water funds. So I was a little skeptical about what happened to all the money that belonged to the people of the community.
I would love to disperse that money 3
Well,
weeks
I
ago,
get- I
let
get
alone
that.
2.5 years ago.
And I understand that, and I think most of that is just a terminology between the township and the city of Alpena that could be cleared up, but somebody will have to work on it.
We've, as a board, been working very diligently for finding resolution in that matter. And will continue to do so.
Try terminology.
Well, there's a
Easier
lot of-
said than done.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna continue. One last thing. I noticed in the budget, there's some $20,000 plus allocated for the Thunder Bay Island restoration. And I think that's wonderful. That is a wonderful legacy, a wonderful history of our community. Pardon?
15,000.
Okay.
Not 20 plus thousand.
Oh, I was all 20, I apologize. Okay, 15. There, again, I believe there's a 501c3 that's formed to work on that project. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, there again, similarities to South Bay would be that you have nonprofit organizations that are willing to do the planning, they're willing to do the funding, but yet considerably more was allocated to that project, which, again, is a nice project, as is Misery Bay, and I support both of them. I think they have a certain type of resident, and tourists probably want to visit that. But a park, again, at the 45th parallel, which is more generalized, addressing recreational needs and wellness for the community as well as tourism, I think will get far more use. So that's why we're, again, asking to reconsider our request for 5,000 versus 1,000. And to reiterate, you've got a group of very locals, very loyal citizens and business owners that are working on this and just have to be part of this. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned earlier
Could
that
you please state your name so that we can
I'm
have.
Corinne Penza. I'm sorry, what's that? Corinne Penza, 4820 French Road. You stated earlier that where it states you've got a 108% increase for one of your members, it's not for one person.
No,
And you said your hands are tied because you can't add line items.
we cannot
To
add
explain
GL
that.
numbers to explain.
You can't, when will you be able to do that? So we don't look at it and go, hi, no, y'all, and
If
you
you would like to be frustrated, let me get the news that I was given this morning.
I realize you're really, you know, it's a hard thing, but you have to look at us out here
Yeah.
going.
And I totally
108%.
understand that because, the state is requiring that we switch our chart of accounts to a uniform chart of accounts. We are in the middle of the process with BSNA, which is our software company. We've gotten them stuff, we're like, okay, it's getting ready to be tested. I get an email at the end of last week going, well, stop, the state's gonna make some more changes, everything's on hold. So it's just, and when we're in the middle of this testing and switching over to the new chart of accounts, we can't be adding or, inactivating accounts or anything. Everything has to stay status quo.
So, I do agree.
So, yeah, so when all of this goes into effect, we're not just gonna say, okay, 108% to this person. We're gonna see in writing where it's 100, this much for this person and this much,
Mr. Schulwitz, would you like to address that question?
There was not one employee who got a 108% increase.
No, we
It was split in
understand
two.
that. It's split in two, I understand that, but
I didn't
the way
understand
things are written, it just looks very bad.
No,
We've been
and-
working
And
on
we
this,
wanna see where it actually goes.
we've been working on
That's all.
this chart of accounts since last May.
And how long do you think it'll
The
take?
former clerk
Well, the
started it, I
state
took it
keeps
over, and now
changing
the
their
clerk's
mind.
handling it.
One of the things that we talked about doing during the budgetary meetings was changing the title or the description. The problem with that is that if we change the description, it messes things up downstream. So we have to keep things exactly the way they are now, and in hopes that one day we can clarify things to you and others.
Right, and I work at a company that works with GL accounts, and you can't just
Yeah.
change them.
So you know.
So, but there's always, okay, within 6 months, this should be cleared up. Or
Yeah, you'd think.
or you're not getting paid for 6 months,
You're
you know, I
working-
don't have.
You're working with the state.
We thought we would be done in 6 months, but now we're on hold again because of the state.
And so if it doesn't get clarified with a new GL number, then is it just open to you to do what you will with it then?
No.
No, we are
I mean,
accountable to.
really, the way it's kind of written, it's kind of like, well, this would be a good deal if you get it, but I'm just saying, you know, then it's just stuck, it doesn't
We're in
go
hopes that once
anywhere.
that process takes place, then we will amend the budget and increase and address those line items. Some unique ringtones this evening.
Yeah.
So we're anticipating, hopefully soon, but there again, once those changes are made, then henceforth, the 108% will actually be truly defined by having a secondary position and GLs according, so.
Well, right, and I can see where it would hurt your chances of getting raises too, if anybody picked up the newspaper and didn't understand, or was under the impression that that's what, I would like a 108% raise. You know, just say, hey, this is what we're getting, but you might have trouble getting it through without the breakdown of it, without the understanding. And
Well,
and
and that's-
understandably so, though.
And that's the process of this budget hearing, is that the questions were brought to this board, and we're here to represent you and explain any of the questions that you have, because we're not trying to hide anything. The unfortunate reality is we're hamstrung with the fact that we cannot create or transfer or rename GLs until the state gives us the nod that we've passed the test with our BSNA software.
They're still not completely deciding how they want the uniform chart of accounts,
So
and that's why it's on hold.
is there a way you could put in your minutes that out of this 108%,
We can-
this person is getting 50% raise, and this person was getting, they're not here.
It would have to be done in
50.
terms of a supplementary and footnotes to GLs currently. But if that's something that would help add more clarification
Well,
to
I
the
think that-
recommended budget as it stands.
I would definitely recommend breaking that down to actually what it is,
Okay.
instead of letting it sit out there at that.
Yeah.
We did, in the original, when we started this chart of accounts change last May, the deadline was going to be December of 18. So we were on it, working on it, and then they
Said,
changed the deadline.
Right.
we're gonna,
Yeah, being proactive was not in our favor in
Right.
this situation.
And like I said, I understand where somebody might say, okay, a 25% raise is reasonable, but when you're just looking at one person with that out there, I don't think you'll get any support at all.
yeah, no, it is a confusing aspect. And so if we need to create a supplemental, an amendment, like an attachment,
Yeah,
if you
even if you
will,
can't create a GL,
you can't.
let us know where it's going.
In this line item, this is its purpose.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And that was our discussion
Yeah,
this
we've
morning.
already
that
had that for adding, until we can actually define it properly with GLs.
I'm sure you guys all like him and holler at him, so. But if there's a way to avoid that,
One of my favorites.
that's what we, you know, if there's a way you can avoid that, it seems like to take that step, it'd be worth the time.
Well, that's definitely something that we would investigate forward. Thank you very much.
Larry says I shouldn't be up here again.
Well, hey, third time's a charm, right?
Yeah, right.
Mr. Reiner?
That's right, I have one other question. Well, actually, one comment on that. So, but you were able to change the chart of accounts for the fire department, because that all got moved to a different location in the budget?
Last year,
Prior.
prior
That
to,
was,
with the public.
yeah, that was
Okay.
prior to,
Okay.
yeah.
Before the state got it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just to the three of you, do all of you take insurance, or do some of you take the in lieu of?
I take the $300
You do.
a month in lieu of.
So in your budget, it says there's health insurance, but that must be for staffing, not for you.
The 2,600 HSA is for my, yeah.
No,
for
I'm
staff.
talking about health
The
insurance.
insurance, right, that's for Rhonda that works.
So
in my
there's no
office.
health insurance provided to you, because you
No.
take it in lieu of.
Right.
But the other two do take,
I take it.
you both take it.
And that is actually just, I'm going on a second.
So then the question becomes, how is that shown? Is that shown in your salary?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
Well,
My
Well,
salary,
we can't add a line
but my
item.
salary is $40,032.
So that should be backed out of your salary to be in parity with the other two, or your health insurance cost should be added into your supplements, one or the other. Because it's not fair to add $3,600 into her salary and not the cost of your insurance into yours. You follow me?
yeah, and
Right,
that, those
this one's
funds are actually.
taxable.
So really, the disparity in raises is even bigger between the treasurer and the clerk and the supervisor. Because
If that's
she's
how
at
you're trying to break
40,000,
it apart.
she's at 40,000 plus the 36 in lieu of, and you're at whatever you're at, 44 and 45 plus cost of insurance. Right?
Well, we could do that subsequently for every position. That is-
But she does have the option at any time to take health insurance.
But I don't need it.
Right, but you could if you wanted to.
Right.
And it could be a cost at some point.
Well, that was an argument with the task board permanent. That wasn't liked very well.
Mr.
Yes, quick one, page 66, another point short. So, I do know now why I retired, because I don't ever want to go through insurance negotiations again, in any sort, in any form. I will say that the last place I worked, though, as an example, our insurance package was 35% of the total salary package. That's a lot of money in insurance, and it's not, but there's no way around that, because as the gentleman said, you have to have a good package to attract good people. So I applaud you for that. I don't have a problem with the insurance packages, to tell you the truth. I just wanted to clarify one last thing on the fire department, because that's kind of what has been in my head since I came. So we have $225,090 that was allocated in terms of equipment. That Mr. Robbins will eventually get a statement, a proposal as how that's best prioritized to be spent on the equipment that he currently has. I would say, please watch that he doesn't necessarily add a cottage on North Point Shores as part of that package, but that's just. That's why I've retired and I think it's sarcastic. But with that said, is there a preference, I mean, when we were at the other meeting, we were trying to talk about buying a possible ambulance that then came off the table because somebody else was under contract to purchase that. But one of the things that wasn't necessarily talked about a lot is, do you guys have a preference necessarily of whether you would buy something in lieu of payments? Because under the list and those kind of things and the beds, we talked about delayed payment, but not necessarily payments, right? We were looking at delayed payment and eventually paying a lump sum. When I'm looking at 225, how much of that can be actually put towards 3 pieces of equipment and paid over time? Because all of that had to be paid in a certain amount of time. Or can we inherit some of that? Because you said we've got an engine right now that's being paid for, still in payments, that is, it's hard, obviously. You hate to pay on things that you know you're going to replace in a heartbeat. But I'm just wondering, do you guys have any way of looking at that you prefer not to pay in a payment? Or, because I would think that obviously payments would make it more easy for the fire department to actually purchase the equipment that they have. Because 225 will cover quite a bit, but not all of it.
And it's at a sunset 5-year village, so I mean, that's really.
It would have to be paid over 5, because you wouldn't want someone inheriting it after 5 years.
So I think there's every piece of equipment and potential apparatus would have to be looked at individually and also as a whole, because how much lingering interest rate accruals do we want to continue to pay moving forward? There's always variables to making purchases. And some of this money is,
They did get 2 power.
as you were present for.
Well, I know, we got the
Yeah,
costs.
so that
but
comes
I thought
out of
we-
that 220.
We still need the costs. I mean, we need the ambulance badly, but I'm just thinking in a sense that I don't see how we're gonna get that equipment if we do not incur
Some costs. And henceforth, the general fund is making a $200,000 contribution to offset those potentials.
So you're saying we have $425,000?
Well, it would go, as it stands right now, it would be into the operations, not to, but thank you very much, Brett.
Thank you.
Cuba, 635 River Street, Alpena. I also own property, and that's why I'm here. I would just like, I had to be late, I apologize. So if this was directly addressed, I would just like to say that I feel that you all should be receiving the same raise across the board. I don't know who among you decides who is more valuable than the other, and how do you define the value and the increase and who gets to make that decision, I don't think that's fair. I think should be straight across the board. And at what percentage does my value increase and at what rate and how does that, you know? And the second comment I'd like to make is I think you need to possibly reconsider that problem that seems to be an issue here with everyone. If you have insurance and the husband and wife issue, there could be a change made in the future that you could address that, yes, she could opt in, but if it is in the same household, that should be addressed, that could be added, that they would not be able to get that $300 a month. And I think many people would probably agree with that. That could be something you'd add to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Speaker.
I have a question. The handout that you put out to everybody, it says Laura Ellery summary is 43,631. Well, how do you have hers higher than the rest,
Because this was just as it stands, as a wage and a taxable income, since we cannot break apart the payment in lieu of,
Okay.
that is her salary.
they're
plus
getting the
third-
same wages right now, are you saying?
Well, Ms. Palovich
Right.
is opted into the health insurance, so she doesn't get the payment in lieu of. That's the discrepancy in terms of this report.
But currently, the clerk and I make the same.
Right.
As of today, the base salary of $40,032.
But her insurance is not in here.
Correct, but.
So why did you put hers in here?
Is added in there.
Because it's a wage.
That's what they mean by it. It should be separated.
Yeah.
And there again, that gets into once we can actually.
Well, it's decepting people. You're showing them that she's getting 43,000, and you didn't even you'd added in her insurance option, but you did not add in Mrs. The clerk's option.
Ms. Palovich.
Right. So to be
Or
fair,
the supervisors.
yeah,
as
and
well.
that's not in there
Or
either.
every other employee.
So then you shouldn't have put hers in.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Rosinski?
One more thing. I'm always, at one of our meetings, and I know this is a budget meeting, but this was at our regular meeting when we had this place packed. And it was brought to the attention that we could not do a ordinance that was passed, the blight ordinance, that we could not repeal it at that meeting. I think that is erroneous, because right under 42.20, except in extreme, I think that was an emergency, and except in a case of an ordinance that is declared to be an emergency ordinance, an ordinance shall not be fully passed by the township board at the same meeting at which it is introduced or before it is published in the form of which it is introduced. And I think we could have appealed that ordinance and redid it right off the bat. And it's right here in the township ordinances, Act 359 of 1947, the Charter Township Act.
And to comment upon that, the direction that was taken by the board was to not enforce and to move and retract as to send to ad hoc committee. Trustee Lappin's working diligently with the committee members that were appointed. And I would say in somewhat near future, their recommendation is going to come back to this board. And if it's a repeal of 135, then what are the mechanisms that are going to fill that void of the need?
But if we're going to repeal and then start it from scratch, like it should have been.
Well, thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Rosen.
Marie Twite, 4165 Truckee Road, Alpena, Michigan, and I wanted to comment on that petition that was brought before this board to repeal that ordinance. And the law book does state that the township residents do have the right to come in here and ask you to repeal it. Instead of forming a board like you did after they brought it in, you could have very well went under advisement and come back to your next meeting, and then if you wanted to repeal it but that should have been re-looked at, because that was a valid petition by the township residents.
Would you like to address the ballot petition?
There's a mechanism for a petition and for an election being held for zoning-related ordinances, and this is in a zoning ordinance. It's the generic term, the police power ordinance, like a blight ordinance.
But it was under the zoning ordinance. It tells you right in that book.
Act 135 is not under the zoning ordinance, not a zoning ordinance. So the petition was advisory, it was information.
That was an international ordinance. It doesn't even belong.
Not a zoning ordinance.
Is that why you did that? You put it under that act so we couldn't petition
No,
it?
it wouldn't belong in the zoning ordinance. Zoning ordinance is for land uses, it's not for this type of enforcement. A building code isn't under the zoning ordinance.
Yes, it is. I have the book that says it is.
Well, it's not. Blight ordinance is under the zoning.
Okay, then I'll bring it in tomorrow and show you.
Okay, I won't be here, but.
He won't
give
be
it to
here.
the
You want me to go home and get it?
For public safety. The ad hoc, a couple of things were brought up on the ad hoc committee about, there was a number of business folks represented there, but there wasn't really anybody from the general public. Has that been addressed with the ad hoc committee?
I'll take that one. The committee is made up of several people, all of whom either have property and or live in the township. We have been meeting over the course of the last several Wednesdays. We will be giving a recommendation to this board. It will be, I suppose if I jump the gun a little bit, and I know I can speak to this point on behalf of that ad hoc committee. It will be the recommendation of the ad hoc committee that ordinance number 135 in fact be repealed. And then at that particular point in time, the ad hoc committee will make certain recommendations relative to sort of slicing out that ordinance. And right now, we have completed the blight ordinance. We are days away from completing our recommendation on a dangerous building ordinance. And we will probably go after that. We will probably discuss, I'm not sure exactly what this ordinance would be, but essentially, we're going to try to figure out a way to bring the trailers into the picture. So registering people's recreational vehicles, not the ones that you park by your house, not the ones that you're waiting to take it on vacation or wherever. These would be the ones that would be essentially set up as a secondary residence or something like that on a vacant piece of property. And apparently the township has had some issues with that in the past. So we're close. It's much more complicated than you think to make sure that we put all the proper language in place, and Mr. Golden has been helping us with that. So give me about a month.
There's a blight ordinance in place, and so part of their work and what I've been assisting with is to improve the blight ordinance.
So you can't repeal 135 right at this meeting now?
No.
This is actually a budget hearing, so we're already getting off task.
Yeah.
So I would rather, kind of, since we're gonna take a short break after this meeting and go right into our regular meeting. But this is a budget hearing, so I've afforded some ancillary questions to be addressed.
Was you going to address the proposed vehicle?
Oh, thank you very much for bringing the lease potential. That was brought forth because obviously you've heard sitting here the counterpoint to that argument of ever increasing mileage rates and reimbursement checks for employees of the township. The federal rate jumped from 53.5 cents last year to this fiscal at 58 cents a mile. So obviously business is not always conducted on premises, and especially for a building official who's by land mass, we're one of the largest townships east of the Mississippi. How do you not go to sites And so that is something that we're still exploring. Have any definite determinations been made about that potential? No, it was just that.
So it's not in there?
It was
Okay.
just a proposed, and that's something that this board would have to look at, and if that's a direction that would be a cost savings mechanism for the taxpayers,
Okay,
then that is something that we'd have to make it a budget amendment, and there again, we have another hamstring as not being able to create GLs, so.
In the water fund budget in the back, the operating budget, there is a recommended budget of $85,000 for a vehicle replacement fund.
Yeah, and that is an independent fund. That's an enterprise fund that is only to be used within, because we're talking about tax dollars versus an enterprise fund. So yes, I do, they have mechanisms in place to replace and retrofit their dilapidated fleet as well. They do. But that is not to be used or concluded or colluded with general fund taxpayer dollars in that regard. Have all questions been satisfied at this point?
Just one other thing I did was part of the meeting a year ago. We have job classifications here for police department. Okay, what police department does the township have? Is this something that you pay for services or going to schools or something?
That is correct. It's under TBJH liaison officer. That is half the salary. It used to be Eric Smith, who was located at the junior high. I believe he stepped out of that role, and they have a new employee. We have not met her, but half of her salary is funded by this township at $38,606, of which historically it would have been nice because it used to be a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 with the county, us as the primary township, and the school systems included. The school systems have stepped back from that years ago, and we've stepped up and now are funding that at a 50% level.
I can probably help with that if you want.
Well, I would like to have some
The new
financial
deputy-
support from
The new deputy's name is Christina Bednarski. She's assigned to Thunderbay Junior High School, and when she's not on duty at the junior high school, then she's obligated and asked to patrol in the township
Yes.
for the shift.
You got it for you?
Yeah, that was what I was wondering, the off-season, she's still got Eric had the primary of the township. and he
It's
would be
the
for
same.
emergencies.
It's the same position, and just a different person in said position. So
Is she a full-time, she is a full-time employee, but does she receive all the benefits as well?
No,
she's not an employee of the township. So
She's employed through the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
They
This is the broadest thing on our part, that if we just do this out of our goodness of our heart, why do we pay for that?
Subcontract.
it's subcontract. Why is that? I don't know if you've watched the news in, like, say, the past 5-10 years, and why there's a grave need for a presence of that sort at educational institutions.
Is that not a connection to your charter township obligation?
That is part of the obligation to become a charter township as well. That of which is satisfied. Are there any other questions? If not, then I think we'll continue to move forward and conduct business. But I'm speaking for myself, I appreciate all the questions and comments that came forward. This is how answers get proper, questions are properly answered. Yes, trustee
Can I
Cole.
say just one thing? Please, folks, if you have some questions and you're not sure how to get them answered, the offices here are open. Please come in and talk to these folks that are here. Nathan has an open door. He would be glad to try and answer your questions. And if for some reason they can't answer your questions, then please come to a board meeting. But we're here to serve and help you people. You elected us to do that, and we're trying our best to do it in all the conditions that go with it. But if you got questions, come on in and see us.
I think you can speak to that, Mr. Ward.
I can. You did a thorough job when I came in and talked to you. I was fairly impressed, as some people here will testify to. There's a couple questions I still have, but I'll talk to you about it after the meeting.
And you know where I'm at. At this point, if there's no further questions, I would entertain a motion to close the public comment. Public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
No, motion. There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Lappin. Yes, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers? Yes. Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Foley?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes. So you have all.
Well, it's gonna be on each one.
Would you like to hear we have to go through this and then get, before you've got, well, that's fine. So, I'll entertain a motion to recess for 10 minutes. So we have a motion to recess for 10 minutes and support by session. Motion, support. Motion with support. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And we're back into our budget hearing. Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Are there any motions that you would like to?
Okay, so before me is adoption of the budget. After the budget hearing, I'll read the following resolutions. Resolved, the Charter Township of Alpena having duly published notice of a public hearing on the proposed budget in accordance with MCL 42.6, having complied with the Section 16 of the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act and the MCL 211.24E, in order to levy an operating rate which exceeds the base for tax rate, and having held the required public hearing, the proposed budget for the fiscal year as previously considered and prepared by the Township Board is hereby adopted by the Charter Township of Alpena budget for the fiscal year April 1, 2019 through March 31st, 2020.
I have to make one correction. That first statutory side, MCL 42.6,
Yes.
it should be 42.26.
Okay, thank you. You want me to reread it?
Nope, just making that clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Matt's just made a
You have
motion.
a motion, yeah. We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Foley?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
No.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Yes, adoption of officer salaries, A, supervisor. Resolved, Alpena Township, not having conducted an annual meeting of electors, the supervisor's salary for the 2018-2019 fiscal year shall be as follows: $45,108 plus the same health insurance coverage provided for township employees, and an annual health savings account deposit of $1,300 for the single plan or $2,600 for the family plan, or in lieu of health insurance, a monthly payment of $300 per month should the supervisor opt out of Alpena Township's health insurance coverage.
There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Foley?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
No.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
B, clerk. Resolved, Alpena Township not having conducted an annual meeting of electors, the clerk's salary for the 2019-2020 fiscal year shall be as follows: $44,000 plus the same health insurance coverage provided for township employees, and an annual health savings account deposit of $1,300 for a single plan, or $2,600 for a family plan, or in lieu of health insurance, a monthly payment of $300 per month should the clerk opt out of the Alpena Township insurance coverage.
There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
I'll support.
It's been supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
No.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Foley?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
C, Treasurer, resolved Alpena Township not having conducted an annual meeting of electors, the treasury salary for the 2019-2020 fiscal year shall be as follows: $41,500 plus the same health insurance coverage provided for township employees and an annual health savings account deposit of $1,300 for a single plan or $2,600 for a family plan, or in lieu of health insurance, a monthly payment of $300 per month should the treasurer opt out of the Alpena Township's health insurance coverage.
There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
No.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Foley?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Trustees, resolved Alpena Township not having conducted an annual meeting, the trustees shall be entitled for the 2018-2019 fiscal year a salary of $1,200 or $100 per month, plus a per diem for each meeting attended by the trustee or township business, including but not limited to township board meetings of $100 per full day, any meeting lasting longer than 4 hours, and $60 per half day, any meeting lasting 4 hours or less.
Matt, you read that right. I'm going to jump in for the fiscal year in the second line. It's in this document, it's stated 2018, 2019. That should be 2019-2020.
Oh, okay, and I amend
Your motion?
the motion to include it shall be entitled for the 2019-2020 fiscal year.
There's a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Trustee Kroll? Sorry, he's not here. Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Foley?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Planning, Zoning, Appeals, and Board of Review. Resolved, Alpena Township not having conducted an annual meeting of electors, board members per diem shall be $58 per half day, any meeting or combination of meetings lasting 4 hours or less, and $84 per full day for any meeting or combination of meetings lasting longer than 4 hours. Board of Review will be $100 per day for public day, $90 per day for non-public days, and $58 for 1/2 non-public days. Chairperson and Secretary of the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board will receive $10 extra for each meeting.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Foley?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Roman numeral 3, depositories. Resolve that township funds be deposited in the following institutions in such amounts upon such items as may be decided by the treasurer, but so that the township has sufficient ready funds available to meet obligations as they come due. M-Bank, Chemical Bank, PNC, Alpena Area Credit Union.
We have a motion on the table for depositories. Is there support?
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Foley?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Roman numeral 4, regular meeting dates. Resolve that the regular meetings of the Alpena Township Board of Trustees will be held on the fourth Monday of each month unless it is a holiday, then being held the following day at 6 p.m. and the second Tuesday of each month unless it is a holiday, then being held following the following day at 11 a.m. at the Alpena Township Civic Building, 4385 US 23 North, Alpena, Michigan. Be it further resolved that the clerk post a notice of these times and dates for regular meetings within 10 days of the date hereof.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Lappin?
Is that me? Yes.
I was good cough.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Roman numeral 5, rules of conducting meetings. Resolve that all meetings of Alpena Township Board be conducted pursuant to the procedures of Robert's Rules of Order as interpreted or modified by the chair upon advice of legal counsel.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby?
Yes.
Roman numeral 6, attorney. Resolved that the township appoints the law firm of Gillard, Bauer, Mazrum, Flora, Smigelsky, and Golden, and the supervisor and the clerk are authorized to execute a retainer agreement with the annual retainer fee to be $33,120, payable monthly at a rate of $2,760 per month.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion?
Is this the same amount as we paid
This is
in the past?
correct.
Yep, yep.
I believe that this retainer fee has remained constant for 10 years.
I think at least 10 years.
Yeah, I think this is the 11th year.
And I would just like to make one more comment. I've made the comment before that I am not comfortable approving an agreement or a contract or resolution unless I have a copy of it ahead of time, and I didn't. So,
Any further discussion? Seeing none? We have support on that, yes. Lappin, you made support. Roll call vote, please.
Treasurer Ellery Summers?
no.
Trustee Dunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Supervisor Skibby?
Yes. And that concludes. This is a second opportunity within the budget hearing for public comment. If there is any further public comment, please stand to the podium, state your name, your address, and limit yourself to 3 minutes.
I will. Bob Young, resident of Pressfield Township, a business owner in Alpena Township, 2509 US 23 Just want to recite something I put together. Well, I'll leave that alone. It's better just to talk about the gateway. Good evening.
Okay.
Hand up nicely. You must have been.
Oh, thank you. You look nice, dude.
Yeah.
Love your shirt.
Well, impressed by it. Anyway, yeah, it boils right down, folks, to the gateway, as we well know, to northern Michigan is Squaw Bay. It's the only non-trespassing area that we enjoy as citizens and tourists and travelers who come north see. When Larry and I, for the last 8 years, and others, Dennis Schultz and Al Lehman, work with you successfully, we're looking for funds to leverage grants. It's pretty much as simple as that. And the grant writers and folks that we talk to say, unless you have a governmental body behind you, you have nothing. So we do think it is the duty and responsibility of the governing body, such as Alpena Township, that either takes the bull by the horns and helps develop. We're here to help you do that. But I think the position needs to be viewed very, very strongly that we are not pushing for personal gain in this thing as business owners. We simply want to have that gateway looking good and being something that passes all the legal things. And the only piece of property that really exists in that Squaw Bay area is a little piece of property that we're working with the owner of the property to donate for a nominal sum, $10,000 or $12,000.
10,000.
To work that in. So it's the singular piece of property, not the tip of the point that is probably soon to be underwater. So just want to make it said publicly that we're doing all we can, don't want to have this thing go away. Because I think frankly, without my friend Larry here, it probably would go away. So I'm personally leaning on you folks to say, know that we're going to come to you for funds to leverage larger dollars. And we're not looking for gifts, we're not socialists. We simply know that the funding and the backbone of this board is crucial to the success of the 23 South Quarter, the bike improvements and such, in a general state. So if you would look at that favorably in any matter in expenditures in 2019, I would personally appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yu. Are there any other public comments?
Yeah, Dave Doan, 2247 Long Park Road. A little disappointed with the board on the budget. You got public input from everybody that talked about the parity for the raise and for the elected officials, and you neglected to hear it or take it under advisement. You just rubber stamped what the proposal was, and I don't think that's right. I think that's wrong. You heard everybody, I never heard one person say that there shouldn't have been parity for the 3 elected officials on their raise. They deserve a raise, there's no question about that. But why didn't the board listen to the people? That's what I don't understand. Why are you here if you're not going to listen to who got you here? If you wanted to be here, you should listen to who is directing you. And everybody here that talked, that brought up the board, brought up the merit raise, said it was due, it was justified, it should have been done, but you guys neglected to hear it. And you just went ahead and rubber stamped your budget. And I think that's wrong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doan.
I'm glad Mr. Doan said that for progress writing, 315 paragraph. I'm extremely disappointed as well. I guess I'm disappointed in a number of things here in this process. Your budget takes effect April 1. I didn't know it was available until last week. I don't think it was. And then there was 2 columns, which made it kind of confusing, proposed and recommended, which must have been after a budget meeting that I think the board had last week. And then you hear public comment, as Mr. Doan said, and then you make a decision that's obviously already been made prior to us getting here and talking. Do you think any of us would have spent an hour and a half or 2 hours before this meeting to talk to you if we thought you were just going to rubber stamp the budget you'd already proposed without taking into consideration the public? We wouldn't have. So I feel like it was a waste of time, and I think you wasted our time.
Is there any other public comment?
Well, I sincerely hope, as it may have been indicated to me, that you consider our request for funding later in this budget year as expenditure progress. And please keep in mind the things that South Bay has tried to reinforce to you during this budget review, just completed it, and then also from Bob Young. And all of us are only doing this because we love the community. We love the township. We love having businesses and living down there. And we genuinely feel that this is in the best interest of our community. Yes, is it going to be different? Certainly it will. But the advantages of more accessibility from the public to view Squaw Bay that we've all come to love over the years, I think is evident. The wellness opportunities, we wouldn't have seen donations from the hospital for wellness programs if they hadn't believed in it. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Over $120,000 raised for planning studies. Just shows you how much the community is behind us. So that being said, please once again, reconsider our request and partner with us for the good of all Alpena, for its residents, for those that are coming here that are bringing dollars, which more so all the time. And the economic benefit this is certainly going to have to moving the cottage industry from the 45th parallel park north into the current commercial corridor. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comments, Larry. Are there any other public comment? I believe part of the parity to answer that question was also addressed when you were here present for the last budget session.
There was no answer given.
There was in that day.
I
It was
heard that answer, but it was also brought up that, you brought up that there was mistakes made. We don't disagree with that. We also brought up that there was mistakes made by the two other elected officials, and so what?
I was just wanting to make sure that the public knew that this conversation did take place and it's not being overlooked. But that is documented within the 4-hour and 43-minute video, I believe, that you posted on YouTube. So, is there any other public comment? Seeing none, is there any further discussion?
What a disappointment.
We haven't done anything with this truth and taxation. That was part of our agenda.
That was actually accomplished with the resolutions that we passed with the operating millage.
That's the first motion, addresses the cites to the statutes.
Okay.
Yep, that's what that covers it, yep. In fact, Mr. Summers, the equalization director, was helpful with that process when the new administration first did its first budget. It was a big help. And we add language to the budget itself to address truth and taxation.
Is there any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the budget session for March 25th for the fiscal years of 19 and 20.
So moved.
Is there support for the motion?
I'll support it.
It's been moved and supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned at 7:26. And we will take a short recess before we jump right back into our regular board meeting.
What was it?
Talking to the wall.
Yeah, they're done.
Yes.